I should probably get an alcohol spray bottle for cleaning these off, too, so they can feel like new from time to time. You know, finger oil can be a pain in the neck with these darn things. What is up, everybody? This is Jay, a.k.a. MultimediaJay. Hopefully, let's see, how do I sound with these darn things? What is up, everybody? This is Jay, a.k.a. MultimediaJay. Hopefully, let's see. I'll have to listen to that on the good speakers. So I reinstalled Logitech's G Hub software. I think I found a software solution for the virtual surround problems with the headsets earlier, and I think it's done through the Windows UI. Basically, I've turned off all the speakers that are listed as optional speakers other than front left and front right. So I'm going to see if that fixes my sound problems in Forza, so that way I can hear everything correctly with a stereo headset, even though the Logitech G software tries to give you a 7.1 surround effect. I tried that and there were missing channels. It was able to make it sound okay, but it didn't sound right depending on the game. And so that's the reason why I initially uninstalled that software. So we'll do that. And we'll see if this fixes it, because I'd like to have access to the new drivers and firmware that come down through the Logitech software for the Yeti Nano. And I'd also like to have access to, of course, the voice effects. Because one of the things I've been tossing around is this idea of getting back into MultimediaJay radio style. Beginning with, of course, trying out the setup. Well, no, that's not even the big issue. The big issue, let's button the shirt correctly here. No, it should be all blue below the neck. There we go. So the big issue, too, is that one of the things I'm thinking of doing for video essays is recording the dialogue using the streaming software and then removing the video, leaving just the audio behind to use for voiceovers. So that way I can have all of the features of OBS working here. There's also a way to use virtual sound connector things I could always uninstall if I really wanted to. Matter of fact, are those things disabled when I'm not using them? Yeah, the cable input is disabled. The cable output should be disabled too. Yeah, there's virtual cables to hook audio between applications using third-party software that's available in Windows 10 these days, or for Windows 10, I should say, these days. So we'll have to take a look at that. I could theoretically send the audio stream from OBS into the video editing software and send the audio over that way, but that just seems like it's making it too complicated, as opposed to recording it, removing the video, and then just leaving the audio behind for all the voiceovers. Just got to find a way to sound good. And I know that some of the broadcaster effects, because it's being processed in real time, sometimes there's a bit of a CPU problem and things glitch out and I come out missing a syllable or something along those lines. Just got to figure out how I'm going to proceed with making something that's more produced like that, because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty burnt out on the whole streamer thing, even as Twitchcon Amsterdam is happening. Just recently I've been discovering YouTube's movie section. The free with ads movies has been expanding a lot. It's like watching movies on TV. You probably don't get full surround sound with a lot of these. And as I found out last night with a 2000s movie that I was checking out, some of them are basically digital copies that have now gone free with ads, or free to play, if you want to use that term. And they're limited to standard def. Of course, standard def just means I can take my glasses off and lean back in the chair, and it's not going to make a difference. If I'm watching the equivalent of a crappy DVD version of a movie that can't even be upscaled, then why? It's just, hey, you know, fundamentally content is king, and there are some film recordings like the Baraka and Samsara series that are great for showing off what Blu-ray can do with its superior quality over streaming due to higher bit rates that are available on the 25 gig discs than most internet streams. No real compression to speak of with that. Well, less of it, I should say, compared to what streams over the internet. But there are certain things that are good for showing off the technology, but fundamentally, as we've learned with video game console after video game console after video game console, making this mistake over the lifespan of console gaming, you know, graphics don't make the game, hardware does not make a console. Eventually, it does get down to what you're presenting in the first place. So it's really something else altogether. Anyways, streamers, yeah, they're converging on Amsterdam for TwitchCon EU, but I don't expect the numbers to go anywhere. If anything, Twitch's viewership numbers might decline because you have all of these people from all around the world that are now in the EU time zone. So if the fans of these streamers are not hardcore enough fans, I think something's off with the AV sync. Either that or it only appears on my monitor. TwitchCon EU might actually drop Twitch's concurrent viewership because you have all these streamers from all around the world that are now in the EU. So if their former audiences who are time zone limited now can't find somebody else to watch, then this is actually going to be a net negative for Twitch. There's also some events apparently that you're not allowed to stream, like some of the streamer parties and whatnot, as I've been finding out from the few Twitch streamers I actually still watch. Who are they? Well, here's a couple of them. Vindalia she's not going to TwitchCon, of course, but she, ESO chill streamer. Jay Streezy is IRLing all around the world, and Just Kath, Thai streamer, found a way to get the money to fly over to Europe for this thing. She's got more of a smart-ass attitude, though. Streamers that can actually have a thick skin are the ones I'm actually going to watch, because the crybabies I've seen enough of. There's this look, especially in this day and age of never-ending collabs to cover up declining numbers on Twitch. There is this look about the cool kids club clique, or whatever you want to call it. These big streamers that all collab together all the time and pretty much run things in large swaths of Twitch because Twitch is small enough to have something like this. A lot of these streamers, they try to pass themselves off as, well, we're just people just like you, until you realize the money that's involved, especially when you find out these people are having custom-built houses built for the richest of them, and planning on moving to an expensive part of California specifically to get away from small streamers, Ms. Kiff, and stuff along those lines. And you see this elitism that starts to just slip out like a Freudian slip of sorts that eventually becomes more and more visible. And then you start thinking, streamers, they try to look like they're one of us, but in reality, the real life equivalent of them is, especially if you're talking high school, how about that clique of popular kids back when you were growing up who got everything they wanted, and if they didn't get what they wanted, all they had to do was cry. That's what I'm reminded of with this. And, this whole ego stroking, look at us, we're all together, Twitch All-Star Game. Yeah, well, not everybody could make it to the convention. This whole thing that kind of developed where, you have your TwitchCon streamers and your non-TwitchCon streamers. No. Look, even Jay Streezy yesterday, I don't know if he was trolling his audience or whatnot, but he was like, don't tell me what to do on my stream or I'll ban you. And I'm like, why should I have to walk on eggshells so I don't say something that's interpreted as telling him how to run his stream when I could just watch movies and stuff instead, be entertained for hours just the same with far better production value and catch up on movies I've been wanting to see for a long time that are now popping up on YouTube and not have to put up with all this drama from, it's just, look, the live streaming era is over. It's like it had its day because of a combination of the adpocalypse and the pandemic. So there are people that went from YouTube to Twitch because they're mad at YouTube because of problems YouTube had 5 years ago. It's 2022 now. YouTube's been working on improving things, although they did lose Lester Chen today. He did leave the company. I don't know who's going to be the figurehead for YouTube gaming now. Come on now, Neil Mohan can't really do everything, can he? So we'll have to see if YouTube can actually acquire some talent to run the gaming division as they try to improve their streams and stuff. So yeah, we'll get to that shortly. But with regards to Twitch streamers, look, the ride's over. It's like, watch the numbers for yourself. And don't forget the hidden losses that are occurring as Twitch continues to go into its shakeout where smaller streamers are quitting streaming now that the bubble is bursting. And the burst of the bubble is affected by how much things get back to normal depending on the state of the virus. So the people that are still able to be successful streamers on Twitch from the last couple of years, they have to come to grips mentally with the fact that they are what they are because of a once-in-a-century pandemic. How many more times do I have to show those numbers? Twitch was stagnant. Their growth had stagnated in 2019 as a platform. The pandemic was an infusion of fresh viewership. Now the question is how much of that stays around, especially as more people kind of get over the whole streamer thing. They kind of get over the whole thing where you feel like you've been used because you started watching a streamer at this level, then they got to this level, and they started ignoring anybody who wasn't an oiler or a T3, so you feel like you've been used. Now, oh, you just got them to the point where they're able to fly around the world on a whim and do IRL, while you sit there strangled by inflation and your whatever you get at your job hasn't been keeping up with it. And then you see these people grinding their streams to a halt and crying about some stupid first world problem that is one of the key reasons why you keep your problems off of the internet. You know, there's probably somebody in the world somewhere that has it worse than you. So if you want to sad fish and go, woe is me, then you can expect to be called out for, you know, trying to sad fish, because of the life of an influencer, you know, versus someone who really is poor. Hey, you know, let's talk about Lester Chen leaving YouTube. YouTube is in a weird position because they're the second largest social media platform in the world. What I think's in play with YouTube constantly losing talent is not some talent purge or some kind of thing about how YouTube is bad or something like that, or maybe people don't feel like putting up with Susan Wojcicki or something along those lines. I think YouTube's too big to really have talent coming and going because of a personal vendetta with Susan or something. The big issue that I have, the big thing with YouTube is that they're successful in a lot of areas and the second largest social media platform in the world. Because they're the second largest social media platform in the world, it's a great place to gain experience. One of the things that happens to large companies is that people put in a couple of years or so in corporate America, and then they take the knowledge they gain from the big companies to a smaller company that they like more. You know, they make the bulkier money at some like high dollar position in corporate America where they pay a lot to attract you and keep you there. And then you start wanting to look for something that's a bit less boilerplate. And so you move to a smaller company over the years, and it's not uncommon for people, for example, where I'm at, who are first level who get to like supervisor role, first level management, and then they start looking for the next big thing because they can be higher up the chain somewhere else. So it's one of those things too, where if you're involved in a good company, in a decent, you know, job site with decent leadership and decent discipline and stuff like that, you start to undervalue your own experience because that's what you're used to. And then you have to go somewhere else, like you're laid off or something. And then you see in a company that's not as good and in a place that's not as established, you see that the experience you picked up and the discipline you picked up is more valuable than you thought it was. You were just too used to the way the big guys did it, so to speak. I think some of that's in play too, especially if you have folks coming in, putting in a few years at YouTube and being interested in things like like Web3 or something along those lines, or some startup culture or something along those lines. And you can bring in now some valuable experience from working in a larger organization to a smaller organization. You know, bring it to a startup or some mid-sized company or something, and get away from maybe there's some elements of the large company you're gaining your experience at that you weren't really a big fan of. I can definitely tell you, though, if it's not that, it would be something like consulting or something, where you spend years gaining experience in a company, and then you retire, you resign from the company and sell your experience elsewhere as a consultant. So businesses that don't know the stuff that you picked up, along the way, can now learn it, and you make money off of it. It's just one of those things you got to keep an eye. It's just one of those things to keep an eye out for with regards to these types of things. So no, I don't think there's something inherently wrong with YouTube that they keep losing talent. I think the issue is the leadership of YouTube gaming is, who exactly do you think is going to be a good fit for that? I don't know if the industry even knows yet. You know, it's like the YouTube creator liaison position. What even is that? It's like, you know, when I was in high school, one of the things that the guidance counselors talked to us about is to understand that with the world changing as we headed into the new millennium, that there were probably going to be jobs that would come into existence during our careers that we could not have imagined by then. And then I look at things like, for example, the rise of data science and stuff along those lines. And I'm like, oh, look, data science is the thing now. So This would never have existed back when I was going to school. So this is the thing too, people talk about, oh, does your college degree get too old? In some cases, you have to adapt and learn new things and change, because there would be no chance for you to have a background in it straight out of college, because it wasn't a thing back then. So it's just part of something I deal with tech people, is when they close their minds to learning new things, they don't realize they've basically just soft-ended their career, and they're just waiting for their job status to catch up. But, I'll just say this, I formally studied computers during the Windows XP era. Yeah, Windows XP. We've since gone through Vista, 7, 8, 10, now into Windows 11, 5 versions of Windows. If I had done what some of these people do and learned one thing and then became antagonistic to learning new things, forget it, I'd have absolutely no chance. Even less of a chance than I have now, that people are prejudicing me for various reasons, like doing warehouse work to get through the Great Recession and stuff along those lines. And then everybody afterwards is like, well, you worked in warehouses for a couple of years, so I guess you're not committed to IT. We're not hiring you. Gee, I wonder what's your problem. Why do you keep working in warehouses like it's still the Great Recession? Companies, though, and their onboarding processes and how screwy they are is a completely separate discussion. But I can tell you, the Great Recession had plenty of that, too. It wasn't just stuff that's happened in more recent years that has been the problem. So this afternoon, This afternoon, I went and, there's more stuff on Twitter. Let me guess. My response that's going viral is going more viral. Come on, show me my update. Yep. 19 people liking the tweet. That's cool. Some guy posted a picture of Winamp running on a Steam Deck, and I was like, Steam Deck, it really whips the llama's ass. Let's see here. Nothing interesting on Twitter, is there? All right, let's close this then. So, I'm a PC gamer, but count me in on Team Xbox. Let me open something else up in Firefox, too. Just keep an eye on this situation. I'm a PC gamer, but count me in on Team Xbox. Load up, please. Stupid thing. This afternoon, I took a look at the Xbox documentary that I listed in the description. It's called Power On, the Story of Xbox. It's on the Xbox's channel. And it was interesting, I've been curious about catching up on the whole Xbox thing since I've really started liking their controllers. The Xbox One controller, cleaned it out, works great with Forza. Xbox Series controller, incredibly solid. Feels a lot more solid than its predecessors. Of course, the Xbox 360 controllers are still out there too, but mine, unfortunately, were wired. And of course, now trigger rumble motors is now a thing, so you don't get 100% of the feedback experience if you're still using a 360 controller these days, because companies and developers can program for the triggers to actually do something. So, I went and played catch-up, and, my experience, my history with the Xbox is interesting. Where do I even begin on this? It was fun watching, the video about the episode. This is an episodic format. I think it was on TV. It was definitely made like a TV show. At minimum, it was a web show, but I'll bet any money this was on TV somewhere. It's on the Xbox's YouTube channel. But I was watching the videos about the original Xbox and the Xbox 360, and I was thinking, yeah, I remember that. So, the skepticism towards Microsoft making a game console when the original Xbox was coming out in the early 2000s, I remember that. Microsoft was the Windows and Office company. The idea of Windows having a gaming brand that would rival the Sony PlayStation it made less sense. I mean, with Sony at least, they were an electronics hardware company, and they were already involved in entertainment with music and movies and things like that. They already had direct ties to entertainment. Microsoft had Age of Empires, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Microsoft, well, whatever. There were a couple of big Microsoft games in the late 1990s, but for the most part, Microsoft was really focused more on Office stuff. It was more associated with Office stuff. So the Xbox really was something kind of wild, especially when you found out, oh yeah, it's just a PC crammed into a little box. It's just, yeah, it was a PC crammed into a box. like what was it, Pentium 3-ish or so for the original, those NVIDIA graphics chip. Totally reminded me more of a PC than literally anything else. So like, yeah, they're going to be close to PC because they use DirectX and things along those lines to make this thing. I was skeptical of it. And so were most of the people that were gaming when I was at college. So I became a PC gamer when I went off to college, not because of any PCMR stuff like what people might talk about today, but as a matter of practicality. The computers we had in the early 2000s, especially if you didn't have a lot of money, were D-sub only for the graphics stuff on the monitor. So you had no way, not even composite connectors and stuff. Today, you'll buy a monitor and it's basically a small TV. You might even have multiple inputs like HDMI, 2 HDMIs, or an HDMI and a display port or something like that. Then there have been monitors, of course, that have taken composite, component, the whole 9 yards over the years. Not in my day. In my day, when I was going off to college, you had a big blocky tube monitor. And I learned my lesson the hard way when I gave myself neck pain my first semester, because if I kept the desk in the dorm room up against the wall, I had to put my 17-inch monitor off to the side and spend a semester looking that way all the time when doing anything on my computer. So keeping your neck not straight for months on end can start giving you problems. So for the spring semester, I found out the ingenious solution, and so did my roommate, by the way. Pull the desk like a few inches away from the wall so the tube monitor can be right in front of you and not, and actually have room to put the keyboard. So it's just tube monitors, man. If you had a flat panel back then, you were from a rich family with money to burn, and you didn't care if you wasted money, because the flat panels of the early 2000s had a lot of ghosting and smearing and stuff. There was a lot that CRTs did better than LCDs for probably the first couple of years of the new millennium. I didn't even buy my first flat panel till 06, and that was a Samsung. When they came out with graphics accelerator chips to speed up the response, they were 8 millisecond displays with interpolators to give similar to 2 millisecond response time. Interesting, because my old TV was an 8 millisecond television. So in the couple of years from monitor to TV, the TVs got about as fast as the monitors a few years before. Gaming monitors, though, are usually faster than TVs until TVs catch up. But TVs are more general purpose devices. Another big difference, especially with this TV, is that I can put it in gaming mode without distorting the colors. My old Samsung, it would turn everything a little on the yellow side if you turned on gaming mode. It makes me wonder what kind of image processing they had for most of the normal stuff. But gaming mode sped it up, but otherwise it was an 8 millisecond display. And, somehow I used it. Although in faster games like first-person shooters, I definitely noticed the latency problems, as people would always nail me before I could get a shot on them. So it's just simply because if you know the science behind why you need a fast-reacting, fast-displaying display to lower latency and stuff like that, you'll know the science behind it. You don't want to be aiming your gun in-game at someone that's not there anymore because of lag, not from your internet, but from your display drawing everything. So that's why gaming monitors have gone up with refresh rates. They've gone up with other stuff, things like that. But anyways, early 2000s, the era of the Xbox being in development and getting developed, I became a PC gamer out of necessity. Since if I didn't want to have to carry a second huge tube thing, like some of my friends did, into a dorm room, and then what if my roommate has a TV, and where the heck are we going to put the thing? Because you only got a desk and a bed. You got three things. You had a wooden desk, a bed. You could at least reverse the bed so you had space underneath to store stuff. You would have a desk, a bed, and a little drawer thing to put clothes in. Although you could always bring a plastic thing to throw under the bed for your clothes and use the drawers as drawers. So you had limited furniture. You didn't exactly have very many options, or in some cases any options at all, to have a second TV, which would be a tube TV. They'd have to find a way to somehow set up in the room and have the college cable go into it. Just wasn't worth it. It was actually one of my friends, when he graduated, gave me his old TV because he didn't feel like throwing it out. And the only reason I was able to use it was because I was in a single. So I had the roommate's desk that I didn't have. The roommate I didn't have's desk was available for putting a second screen on besides my computer stuff. So tube TVs sucked so badly. And the thing where the resolution on the TVs were lower, so it always would look worse. You'd never want to use it with your computer anyways. That sucked as well. Standard def television, the era of the multi-monitors with composite components as well as, D-sub, DVI, etc. Not a thing yet. So I'm over here, and I became a PC gamer out of necessity simply because the only screen I had available was my monitor. There were some people that asked their roommates nicely if they could borrow not chest of drawers, if they could borrow their little bureau thing to put their TV on so they could have PlayStation. And that's the only way it worked. It's just, that's the only way. Then they bring in a little 13-inch TV or something. Otherwise it would weigh a ton. You have to haul those in on foot unless you brought a truck with a dolly out to the dorms. But it's just, no. It's just, forget it. So that's what made me into a PC gamer. I had insisted on a little more power. This is one of the things that the folks my dad worked with at the time tried to warn him about. Don't let your son get you to spend too much money on a computer. Make sure it doesn't have more than 64 megabytes of RAM. If he has 128 megs of RAM, he wants to play games on it. I had 128 megs of RAM. I eventually upgraded it to 512 on that HP Pavilion. Heck, the computer actually came with a TNT2 card, so I did have graphics right off the bat. I wasn't using integrated graphics. And so I was able to play a couple of titles like Revolt, Command & Conquer, Red Alert 2, and, Morrowind wouldn't be a thing until 2003 for me, so I was actually playing first-person shooters like Unreal Tournament first. So, playing these, I became a PC gamer out of necessity, and let's not forget, one of the reasons why I really appreciate using console controllers as is, working in Windows 10 like the Xbox controllers, one of the big reasons why I support using console controllers nowadays is it wasn't a thing back then. You had to get special controllers to game on PC. The old GamePort controllers. There were entire brands like Gravis, for example, that were just PC controllers. I mean, even the third-party like Mad Cats or High Performance and whatnot would stick to consoles. On PC, you had much more limited. You could get flight sticks and stuff, but in terms of game pads, you'd have like the Gravis thing or something along those lines. There are a couple of game controllers out there, but they were specific to PC, and it just felt like, yeah, I'm a PC gamer because I'm stuck using this certain branded controller. In my case, and I've shown this, I got rid of this with the Great Sift, my one and only gamepad controller that plugged into your sound card's big, like, DIN port alongside the audio ports. My one and only one and only GamePort controller was a Radio Shack controller. It had turbo for everything at least, but it had 6 buttons like a Sega controller, 1 stick that felt like a Nintendo 64 stick, and very clicky as hell D-pad that you could hear if you were playing something on an emulator and you were like, yeah, I'm playing an emulator, I'm not playing a real Nintendo, because I can actually hear the darn gamepad. Whatever. Anyways, yeah, so there were two like analog, actually there were 2 analog triggers underneath, but they functioned like digital buttons, so it was a little on the weird side with that. Felt like a 360 controller, but cheaper. And the thumbstick felt like a Nintendo 64 thumbstick. And here's the funny part. The thumbstick had 2 sliders here and here because you could recenter it if it detected wrong and stuff when you went and powered your system on. But yeah, it sucked being a PC gamer. No Steam, CD-ROM games only, and DRM was becoming a thing, becoming an annoying thing. And you would have CD checks with your games. And it's just, even for ports, PC ports, it was a different experience because of this DRM. Grand Theft Auto Vice City. People loved it on PlayStation 2. All my friends who had PS2s loved it. I got the PC version. I played a version of Grand Theft Auto Vice City that required the disc to be in the tray, and it would spin up like a jet taking off on those old 2000s drives. like every time you got into a car and it had to play music off the radio because it played the radio music off the CD-ROM while it loaded the rest of the game in on the hard drive and the RAM. Nothing like being in a giant getaway scene running away from the police, and then you get in a car and the game freezes for 15 seconds while the CD drive spins up. It's also one of the reasons why I've had a fondness for computers with doors on the cases, to try and muffle some of the sound from the jet taking off CD drives of the period. Kind of obsolete nowadays, with nothing using CDs anymore except retro games. It's kind of obsolete these days, but makes for a nice clean look and stuff like that. And nowadays I use it for more like muffling the fan noise and stuff on the Define R5 that I have nowadays. Yep. So that was the environment. That was the environment when the Xbox was announced and in development. And I got a good chuckle out of Microsoft making a game console, because in the 1990s, with Windows 98 in particular, and just how much the DOS core just collapsed under normal use, and just Microsoft computers, the idea of Microsoft making a computer was something that would get memed about in the days of dial-up internet. It was one of those stupid spam emails that people would send around, and he'd print off just to have a hard copy and laugh at some stuff. I actually think I might still have one in aside from my high school yearbook, I also had a special scrapbook whose graphics and cover actually looked better than our yearbook, because it had 2000 fireworks, whereas the girl in charge of our yearbook picked a lavender purple color for our official yearbook. So I fooled a few people with my scrapbook I fooled a few people with my scrapbook when we were graduating. But it's just, anyways, yeah. So the meme was that imagine if Microsoft made cars, and it made fun of how Windows 98, indirectly, I should say, made fun of how Windows 98 would crash under normal use. You just be trying to use your computer as normal, and it was inevitable. At some point, you would get blue screens, you would get things freezing, or the most common thing, you'd go to shut your computer down, and it would constantly stay on Windows is shutting down, and you would have to eventually just pull the plug because it would never actually shut down the normal way. Windows 98, yeah, I loved it when Windows 2000 became a thing and everything moved over to the NT kernel, and shutdowns and blue screens were reverted to something more serious whenever they happened. Not, oh, you've used your computer for like 6 months without reinstalling Windows, so now things are going to freeze, crash, and do other stuff on a regular basis. It wasn't very good. And so the thought of Microsoft making a game console was, quite frankly, hilarious. And I imagine, the skepticism towards Microsoft entering the gaming world with the original Xbox, it was definitely represented among my colleagues in college. I was a PC gamer out of necessity. When I got into PC hardware, and this became a thing eventually with the Silver Bullet when I built it, but I think I bought my WinFast PV2000 XP card first before I actually upgraded, if I remember right. 2002, I think, summer 2002. One of the reasons I did that, too, was to be able to put the college cable through my computer and not need a second TV. My friend who graduated and gave me his clunky TV graduated in 2002. So I used it, but then I was like, I didn't want to have like a second tube screen, so I got rid of it that summer. Basically, he basically got out of dumpstering it, but I did it for him like a couple months later. It was a worn out tube TV anyways. The brightness could be all the way up and there'd barely be a picture. I was just like, oh, I finally got TV in my room. I've been here for 2 years now, and the TV, just now I'm finally getting to watch college cable. So wound up getting my TV card so I could put the college cable through, but because my computer could now take a coax and display it with little or no latency, as well as composites and S-video, I called home for my consoles, found out my folks gave away my NES, boo, but I hid my Super Nintendo, and I kept my Nintendo 64 hooked up. I still have those to this day. But called home for my consoles, so now TV and the consoles could go through the computer and be displayed on one 17-inch screen. And that's when I got back into console gaming. Didn't have the money to buy a PlayStation 2. That had to wait until after graduation when I got a real job. But eventually, my first console post-college was actually the Nintendo GameCube, playing catch-up on what I missed. And then eventually a used fat PS2. Then eventually I got a slim PS2 a couple of years later because I heard they were more reliable in the long run. I still have the slim PS2 to this day. Got rid of the fat one years ago, because apparently they started having laser issues. Nowadays, though, there are plenty of parts out there for DIY people to repair fat PS2s. So I think the only other issue would have been power efficiency. If I'm playing old PS2 games or even PS1 games, why not play it on a device that like only draws 20 watts grand total? It runs cool, and it just does what it needs to do. Of course, the PS3 to the tune of 70, 80 watts could play PS1 games, but the hard drive, I think, was the good thing with that. I don't even know if my PS2 still works. It's been unplugged for years. It's like, why do I even still have all this stuff? Wish Sony would get this right one of these days and have like what Microsoft has with Xbox across multiple generations. Sony really was the king of the hill back then. It's like PS2, it was the thing. You know, PS2, when it first came out, there were some guys I went to school with that worked in the AV office that had some extra money lying around. They bought a PS2 very closely after launch, brought it in. We took it to an empty classroom, rigged it up to the projector in the classroom, played life-size Tekken on the classroom's big screen. So funny to see the characters in Tekken that bigger than we are because we're using a projector. The PS2 was absolutely the console that ruled the roost. Everybody had one because they were being used as DVD players. Yeah, just like PS3 and Blu-ray, which I still have a PS3 for Blu-ray. PS2 was many people's first DVD player. In my case, I had a DVD-ROM in my computer. Back then, you had to get either a CD burner or a DVD-ROM because of a format war with burnable DVDs. So I bought actually a system with both kinds of drives. Two optical drives is like a standard in my machines for years because of that, until I finally smartened up and realized, hey, you know, that was mostly a problem because of the format war. I can have one combo drive, especially when I got into Steam. Especially when I got into Steam and everything and stuff along those lines. So, yeah. PlayStation 2 was the dominant console. I only knew one single person with an Xbox. One single person. Years and years and years of PlayStation 2, and I only knew one person with an Xbox. That's how tough it was for Microsoft to get established. Eventually there were Xbox fans, and I think the thing with the original Xbox is it was hard to really mentally process what exactly Microsoft was trying to make back then because of what they were known for, Windows, Office, PowerPoint, etc., versus what they were trying to do, which is challenge Sony, a very deeply embedded competitor at the time. So I can tell you, I definitely had problems, really processing the idea of what an Xbox was. Xbox Live was also something completely new. Console multiplayer was something completely new. Even a console doubling as an entertainment device to show photos or watch movies with DVDs and stuff was something new. It's just even the PlayStations, even the original PlayStation only played audio CDs on its original CD-sized games. So there's a lot of new stuff that none of us could have really understood at the time. So I can tell you, despite there is problems nowadays with the expiring batteries and having to fix that before it corrodes your motherboard if the battery bursts. Besides the battery issue and the other issues with original Xbox, the original Xbox is basically an acquired taste for folks like myself. It's if you didn't buy one to be cutting edge, it became the console that you had to grow and learn to appreciate. The mainstream status of Xbox didn't really begin until the Xbox 360. The PlayStation 2, most successful selling console of all time, it beat out the Atari 2600 in terms of sales towards the end of its life. But PlayStation 2 did incredibly well. The Xbox took some years to really catch on. And so when you watch, if you watch the Power On the Story of Xbox documentary series that I have listed in the description, if you have that sort of stuff going on and you watch that, keep in mind that in the 2000s, when the original Xbox was being developed, it was something you had to mentally wrap your head around and process as to why would Microsoft do this? Like, what exactly is the point of Microsoft making a game console? What do they hope to accomplish? Even when Xbox Live came out, it took some serious getting used to in order to really understand what was going on. And then we have the Xbox 360. The Xbox 360 represented mainstream Xbox stuff finally becoming a thing as all of that started getting going. Nope, nothing interesting on Twitch either. Yeah, Twitchcon, putting everybody into the EU time zone. So now Twitch, this is the time for people in other time zones outside of the EU to try and see if anyone will watch them, now that all these streamers are all tied up at Twitchcon and only broadcasting on EU time. Interesting. So, yeah, popping other stuff here. We get to the Xbox 360. And the Xbox 360 is the first mainstream Xbox. The Xbox 360 is the first mainstream Xbox, and a lot of the stuff that was kind of experimental looking on the original Xbox went mainstream on the 360. Things like Xbox Live, wearing headsets, the whole 9 yards, things like that. The 360, I remember the launch being, of course, trying to outdo the PS2, even though Sony was developing a PlayStation 3. But then, of course, we got to the whole Red Ring thing and all that other stuff. I saw numerous people with like, oh, I've had 3 Red Rings. You know what? I'm getting a PS3. No matter what the issue is with the games, no matter what the issue is with the hardware, I've had 3 Red Rings. They made like these dramatic YouTube videos. There's one in particular, if it's still on YouTube, I got to find it and put it in my classic YouTube playlist, where a guy had 3 dead Xbox 360s in less than a year. And he's like, I'm done with this. And he plops down a PS3. Not like the PlayStation 3s couldn't fail either. The PlayStation 3s did have the red light of death, but it was nowhere near as common. PS3 was also a more refined device. There were things like, for example, more scratch protection with the laser lens. So you could turn your PlayStation sideways like an idiot and it wouldn't scratch your discs, unlike the 360. But the 360, because of some of the mechanical issues and some of the designs and some of the cut corners, the 360s could actually put scratches in your disc under normal use. Maybe like vibrations from the house or something. But it's just one of those things. Not everybody who scratched discs on the 360 did it by being a moron and turning their console sideways while it was powered on. So there are other things that could happen too, and other assorted stuff. The Xbox 360 also reminded me so much of a very badly running computer. It actually, the fan noise from that was almost the same as my original HP Pavilion. You ever listen to an original Xbox 360 power up and run? It sounds like a terrible computer from that era. You get this whiny, drony fan, which sounds like, actually my HP might have sounded like that at one point. If you ever stuck running a computer off of 80mm fans, you know the sound. There's this whiny, drony fan, and there's a CD drive that sounds like a jet taking off when it spins up. So yeah, that's about as crappy 2000s computer as it gets. Oh, okay, so I'll make it a little quieter by putting it in some kind of glass case or something so I don't have to hear the noise. Oh wait, these things overheat, and they eventually screw up their solder joints and Red Ring on you. There are videos about the towel trick and all kinds of other garbage and stuff like that. I might just look up like Red Ring 360s. But the thing is, though, if I look that up nowadays on YouTube, I'm probably going to get shunted over to like video essays on the Red Ring problem with the Xbox 360 and not the actual videos from back then. So I probably have to go to regular Google and look up, some things people were saying at the time, or YouTube videos from back then. Maybe the Internet Archive could help with that as well, but it's just one of those things. The Internet Archive might be able to help with some of that. But the Xbox 360 in its original form, the white boxes and stuff, I wasn't a fan of it. I realized they eventually won the generation, But the Xbox 360 won the generation by being the best of the worst. PlayStation 3 had technical issues, and it was too expensive and some other things. Developing for the Cell processor was also a little on the difficult side. It also introduced some quirks, like we saw with the attempts to put Skyrim on the PS3 and stuff along those lines. The Nintendo Wii was obviously a casual gimmick console. It played the same role as the Nintendo 64, where it is something you would want to get alongside your main console so you and your grandparents could play Wii Sports or something. So Nintendo really stopped being a serious competitor with, you know, the various hardware gotchas they had. Even the Nintendo Switch nowadays, there's no reason for me to really play a game on the Nintendo Switch if it's available somewhere else. So it's the same issue that I run into with PC games. It's the same issue I run into with PC games and stuff. So if I see a multi-platform game, I have to ask myself, is that on PC before I buy it on console? The only reason for me to play it on a console is if I can't get it on a PC. So it really, that cuts down the amount of games that I can really enjoy on console. The only console that I really think I want to get in this generation is the Xbox Series X, and that's because of the backward compatibility. I'm curious how many games I can go buy at thrift stores and stuff, and then play them on the Series X by registering the disc or whatever it is. It's just one of those deals. Since Microsoft actually somewhat understands what Steam has been doing for years with, you know, multiple generations of Windows representing a lot of backward compatibility, Steam and GOG can hook you up with years of PC games, unless they're douche muffins like Ubisoft that magically turn off the game from the Steam store to put it on their own store as part of a $100 bundle. Yeah, that wasn't very nice, Ubisoft. Who's going to use Uplay or Ubisoft Connect as a Steam clone? You know, this is like, well, EA Origin is still around, so I guess that can still be a thing. But are we going to see stuff like what Steam does get fragmented into launchers for every publisher out there? So now you got to have like 7 or 8 things running in your taskbar when you start your computer. Well, at least Steam, in most cases, let you add non-Steam games to Steam and use that as your one game manager to start all these up. But seriously now. Anyways, the Xbox 360. The original model Xbox 360, I pretty much was glad I didn't have. It was reason enough for me to go to PS3 for that generation. The original model Xbox 360 is the original model Xbox 360 is the original what am I even saying? I'm getting tired for some reason, probably because I got up earlier and I've spent a couple hours today zonking out in front of Xbox documentaries. The original Xbox 360 was a joke. It ran badly. It reminded me of a badly running computer. When the Xbox 360 was brought to slimline, though, that represented a pretty decent improvement. My favorite of the bunch is the 360e, which was the least popular because it was made to look like the Xbox One. But the 360e, I think, might have had some chances to refine a few more things. Slimline consoles, especially if they're, they don't generate as much heat and they run lower on power as a result of technological improvements, are usually a good thing to get. I kept my PS2 Slim, got rid of my fat PS2. My PS3 is actually a PS3 Slim. And it's yeah. So technological improvements are pretty nice when it comes to consoles and things along those lines. But the 360, just like the original Xbox, the Xbox 360 is an acquired taste. It's something that you grow to appreciate later. And now we're at the point now where the Xbox 360 was a 2000s console and it's the 2020s, and people are looking to it for nostalgia. Hopefully not getting a red ring Xbox for that part of their childhood, but the Zoomers that grew up with 360 as their first console, it's been around. It's hard to wrap your head around it, but, a little bit of a reality check for how long ago the 360 really was, especially for those of us who remember when the original Xbox was in development and we were trying to wrap our heads around that, as difficult as it was. This is the Xbox Series controller. How many Xboxes in are we with this generation of hardware? Xbox 360 One Series, 4th generation Xbox. This thing is the Xbox equivalent of a GameCube controller. Does that make you feel weird or what? This thing is the, and it's interesting that the Series X, which has the blackout version of this controller, as opposed to the Series S, is basically a bit of a cube. It's like rectangular, but it's pretty close to a cube, more so than a lot of the other Xboxes and previous generations of it. Itching, I don't know why. Is the air conditioner doing too good of a... Yeah, the air conditioner is doing too good of a job. 43% humidity and 73 degrees. Yeah, it's a nice night out, though. This is the nicest of the nights, so maybe I should turn down the AC a little so it actually gets a chance to humid up in here a little. I'll adjust the temperature. I'll adjust that after the stream. Yeah, this thing is the Xbox answer to a GameCube controller. It gets even more interesting when we factor this in to Sony and talk about Sony stuff this way. This is the equivalent of a PlayStation 4 controller on the Xbox side. Xbox 360, Xbox One, Xbox Series. PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting. Although, if you really want to make an old person feel weird, Atari 7800. No, Atari Jaguar. If we combine together the redos of this 2600, Atari 2600, Atari 5200, Atari 7800, Atari Jaguar. Or, if you're from the Commonwealth, Atari Jaguar. You know how it's spelled. Enough of this, fourth generation type controller. Enough of that stuff. So yeah, the Xbox 360, it's something that I believe you'd have to come to appreciate as a piece of nostalgia or a piece of gaming history, and it's probably an acquired taste that you'd be appreciating more now than back when it was current. When the red ring was a thing, you were probably glad you had a PS3, but you can come to appreciate what the Xbox did now that it's pretty much in the rearview mirror, and we had the Xbox 360 Slim and the Xbox 360e moving forward from the slow roasting hardware of the original 360. Then there's the Xbox One. I referred to it in the 2010s as the Xbox what? Yeah. TV, television. You know, when you watch these documentaries and you look at the rationale internally for what Microsoft was trying to do back then, it does make sense from an intellectual perspective, but it's all academic. It's not what consumers were looking for. So, thank goodness Phil Spencer brought everything back in line and saved the brand from the days when Adam Sessler said that an Xbox One looked like a Betamax player. Yeah, the X-Bone, as I like to call it. I do have a controller for it. What am I doing? Two of them, actually. Just been charging them up here. Yeah, so the X-Bone. I mean, this controller nowadays feels a little less sturdy, probably because you have smooth plastic, whereas this is more textured. I imagine it might feel a little bit more hollow. Well, it is pretty sturdy in that respect. This feels more hollow with that sort of thing. But yeah, the X-Bone. So you had the original Betamax Xbox player. The original Betamax player Xbox One gave way to the One S. And then the one I actually respected was the One X, which this controller would have matched. So the X-Bone, the big issue I had, though, is the same issue I had with the PS4. Consoles settled into this rut by the time the 2010s were rolling around of being largely for price and simplicity. And that's one of the things I want to do. I'm at my limit for notifications now that I've done this chat stream. I got to find out when the cooldown is for 24 hours since 3 things ago. Actually, I can check my email for that because I have the going live messages in my email. So I can see when the 3 thing expires from the 3 somethings on YouTube limit for notifications expires, and when I can do something again and have notifications go out. The Xbox One, though, the big issue with Xbox One and PS4 was that they fell into this rut where consoles were not interesting hardware-wise. Let's take a look at some things here. In the days of the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox, despite the Xbox trying to one-up the PlayStation 2 on hardware, we're still talking standard def televisions, and maybe even televisions that aren't even widescreen. On the PlayStation 2, you had to hit 2 buttons to go into progressive scan mode to get out of interlaced mode, which I'm sure people forgot to do like 90% of the time when they got a TV that was good enough for it. The GameCube would auto-detect and give you an option of going straight into progressive scan mode. We're not even talking about HD. We're not even talking about widescreen television. We're just talking about square screen standard def. So you had that, and you had PlayStation 2 and Xbox conforming to that standard at the time. Xbox 360 and PS3 were 720p consoles. First step into the world of high definition. And the Nintendo Wii was made fun of for only doing 480. Yeah, good games, but only 480 when their competitors were going into 720 territory. Now, if you knew what you were doing as a PC gamer back in those days, you could go ahead to 1080-30 with the hardware that was available in the 2000s. And you could buy a 1080p TV and skip 720p when you decided to get rid of your tube TV and go with a flat screen, which is what I did. I saved up some money and spent like $800-something on a 1080p Samsung TV, the one that lasted for years and years. Probably still works, just needs some capacitors replaced. But that TV was something I had to really save up for and sacrifice a tax refund for. All so that way I could leapfrog to 1080p and skip 720p coming up from standard definition. Because I figured it was one of those incremental purchase things where you'd buy what you only buy what you can afford instead of what you actually want. I knew 1080 was a thing. I knew Blu-ray was going to make 1080 more of a thing. I wanted to do everything in 1080. The consoles, though, particularly when I got my PS3, I was very rudely reminded that time and again, these high-definition consoles were actually doing 720-30. 720p 30. And here I was. By the time the Xbox One came out, I was playing in 1080-60 on some games. Definitely 1080-30 with decent settings. It's pretty cool. Skyrim especially ran incredibly well. And this is the original 32-bit version of Skyrim we're talking about. The 64-bit revamp with the special edition was even better. So, yeah. The Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 were 720 consoles. I was expecting the PS4 and the Xbone to be 1080 consoles in some way, shape, or form. But nope, the hardware was too weak. They couldn't do it. They would fake it by running at 900p and scaling up a little. Whereas PC gamers at the time, we were running 1080. And looking to move beyond 1080. 1440, or even when 4K became a thing, 4K, if you could pull that off with your hardware. But the consoles, they were a disappointment. Couldn't even do 1080p. You know? Late in the game, I see S-Fan, of all people, playing the Final Fantasy remake on PlayStation 4, 30 frames per second, maybe. It looks good graphics-wise, doesn't have a good frame rate. And then there's a whole thing with boost mode and all the other crap like that. No, disappointment. Complete and total disappointment. The hardware revision for PS4 Pro and Xbox One X was what the original consoles should have been in my book, even if they were more expensive. And that's why I don't have that big of a problem with the Xbox One X being more expensive. Think about the inflation side of it. If a $400 console, give me my in2013dollars.com thing, 400 USD in 2013 is worth what today? You factor in average inflation since 2013. You're talking about a $500 console today. So the Xbox Series X at the $500,000 mark is basically just keeping up with inflation. But at the very same time, a 4K 120 console that can probably do more frames per second and with more fidelity at 1080p, which I've been reading about, the Series X handles 1080 a lot better than the One X did because of the better hardware. You have all that going on, and it basically represents consoles getting their stuff together, because there's only so long that you can go before you get sick of referring to consoles as crappy gaming PCs, because that's what the PS4 and the Xbox One was crappy gaming PCs. You want to be stuck at less than 1080p, 30 frames per second, play on a console. You know, not have very many opportunities to get the 60 FPS gameplay that became more and more of a thing in the mid and late 2010s on PC. Get a console. And how can we forget consoles getting weak enough to be easily targetable by sometimes second-hand console killer PCs, like my Optiplex Delosauruses. Wasn't the only console killer out there, though. People were building blah blah gaming PCs just to replace consoles, and I think that's shooting too low, so to speak. The idea of a console killer PC is to get into PC gaming at whatever hardware you can get for the price of a console. Harder to do now with the Series X than it was with the Xbox One. But that's really it, you know? And now here we are today with consoles actually throwing some weight around, but costing more. But at least they're not a laughing stock from people that are into PC gaming. There's now a thing where, you know, with PC gaming, you're forced into trying to get upgrades instead of new systems, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense money-wise. But of course, you know, not having to mess with Xbox Live Gold, you know, being able to do everything through the internet you already pay for with separate apps like Discord for voice comms or something, I would definitely prefer that over an Xbox. But let's just say that I've come to appreciate, through watching this history, these documentaries, if you will, the history of the Xbox, I've come to appreciate, you know, the culture that it has built up. Because I can tell you, I skipped it. I didn't have a 360, I didn't have an Xbone, just the controllers. And I've been a PC gamer for 20 years, originally out of necessity, nowadays by choice. Nowadays by choice, because there's enough support from Team Xbox for PC gamers that you can get some decent experiences without having to even bother with consoles at all, particularly Xbox Game Pass for PC. Great way to level the playing field, even though theoretically Windows 10 and Xbox should be rivals to each other. That's the way they would have taught it in business school. Two similar products that are so close they step on each other's toes. You know? Two similar products that are so close to each other that they step on each other's toes. That's what Xbox and Windows 10 should be. But they're not. Well, actually they are, but Microsoft doesn't seem to care. So, you know, cross-play, all kinds of other stuff. And also, you know, looking at the cloud and things like that. So you can play your Xbox games on more devices if you pay some kind of membership fee in this day and age with where does the console fit in relation to PC and mobile, as well as cloud. Cloud, I think, isn't mature enough yet to really be what it should be at this point. Either way. It was an interesting set of videos. It was an interesting set of videos to watch, or shows, I should say. And it really gave me a whole new appreciation for what Xbox has spent the last 20 years building up. And I could definitely say, yeah, I'm a PC gamer. Count me in on Team Xbox, though. Especially when I can get full crossover with console hardware for controllers and the like. This definitely wasn't a thing back in the Nintendo days when I was growing up. So, great to have crossover with controllers and other peripherals these days, as well as, you know, not feeling like PC gaming is some kind of second-rate thing like it used to be the case with all the DRM and everything along those lines. Never thought I'd say this. Sony, though, there's been a couple of consumer-unfriendly things they've been doing that I haven't really approved of, particularly with how they treat content creators. that's also part of this discussion as well. All right. Speaking of discussions, let's see, who do we have here? And what do we have here? Not live streaming. Take me to the channel content. Got a couple of stuff from streams things to work on. But you're going to see less from me. Let me just say a couple of things. Coming over here and just lurking because you have me going in a muted tab just to make me feel better and have more than 0 concurrence. This isn't Twitch. It doesn't work that way. Twitch is the home of stupid stuff you do to try and make small streamers feel better. It doesn't need to be the case over here. So if you have me in a muted tab, don't even bother. You know, don't even bother. Only have my stream tuned in if you're actually watching and enjoying it. That's one of the good things about YouTube, is that we don't have this concurrent culture over here. And the feature we know is not as developed as it should be. And now YouTube gaming has lost even more leadership with Chen leaving the company. So there are plenty of reasons why people shouldn't take it personally if they don't get a lot of concurrence on YouTube. We've gone over the raw numbers. We've gone over game categories like Elder Scrolls Online, where if you stream on YouTube and you have any concurrence at all, you're doing really well, because YouTube is not developed the way Twitch is. And the whole attitude towards streaming is different over here. The whole attitude towards streaming is different over here. And there's a reason for that. If any of you people tuning into these things are not subscribed, subscribe. I always have chat on sub-only mode because the I love you spam bots nearly all the time are too stupid to be programmed to subscribe to get past a sub-only chat. You know, every single time that I have ever put the chat full open, there have always been spammers. So almost never do any of these spam bots get programmed to be able to actually break through into a sub-only chat. So, but you're going to see less from this channel because at this point, I've about had enough of chat streams. Just, there's a lot of things that do things better than the chat streams, and there's been a bit of an experiment that I've been doing with them to see what exactly works and what exactly doesn't. And it's the thing I've been talking about with streams versus videos versus short form. All three of those formats are good at certain things. What's the challenge for any YouTuber is finding out what's good at what. And so chat streams in particular are good for updates and just hanging out and talking. But if nobody's talking, have a little something to talk about and then call it a night. But even that is something I've been questioning lately. But I don't need mercy views on any of these streams. And I'm not looking for that. That's not the way YouTube works. And it's one of the reasons I'm over here. So if anybody wants to be a little douche and be like, oh, look, you only have one viewer, there's plenty of things I can point that person to related to how YouTube works and YouTube's attitude towards streaming to give the part 2 of the story. Plus, in this day and age where being a streamer is sucking more and more because other video formats are being rediscovered, and on YouTube, that's gone in the direction of long form with all these video essays you see all over the place getting all the views. You know, with all of that going on, the era of the stream grinder is over. Over on Twitch, they have nothing else. So, of course, you're going to find people stream grinding over there. That doesn't need to be the case over here. And I think eventually the general public is going to smarten up to this. But you're going to see less from this channel because I want to work on more stuff. And also, I want to play games without streaming them because I'm having a hard time figuring out what exactly should I stream and what should I just enjoy offline. I don't want to hold up a game backlog because I'm waiting to play some stuff streams out of every single game that I have, which won't really contribute much anyways, other than, especially in this day and age where you don't really need to just see someone play a video game anymore. You want to just see gameplay footage? There are live streams of video games going on YouTube right now that you'll get in the algorithm's results. One of the streamers, quote unquote, who is always live, besides the mainstream media, of course, in my little box on this very limited streaming interface here on YouTube, is retro game streams, where it's a console, but it has nothing but gameplay footage. No commentary, no streamer. It's just retro video games streaming 24/7. It's similar to like the relaxing lo-fi to study to and other music things people are doing. You know, when you get outside of Twitch, live streaming changes drastically because you see every other genre that's not popular on Twitch being done on YouTube, because YouTube has been open enough for a wide variety of stuff to be on this platform. So, and I've heard the veiled criticism when people say, oh, he's a YouTuber, but a lot of what he does nowadays is streams, in a very disgusted tone. That's because, and let me be the voice of reason yet again, streamable internet that gives you the bandwidth to stream properly wasn't competitive in my area until 2 years ago. A lot of what I've been doing since 2020 is finding out what to use live streams for, even as the live streaming scene has completely changed all around me. And I think, even the big streamers on Twitch who are currently partying over in Amsterdam, they're going to have to figure that out for themselves as well. But the landscape is changing. The landscape is changing, just like the landscape changed on YouTube when streaming became a thing, when YouTube Shorts became a thing, and now you have movies free with ads that can be a thing. If it's video, it's probably on YouTube, unless it's inappropriate. That's the way it is nowadays in the 2020s. So, chat streams, I don't know at this point. Now, unless people want to actually talk about stuff, there's no real point in having these things. Could do some game streams here and there and try and find some use for them. But as it stands right now, there's probably better things I could be working on, especially in the summertime when the ability to make videos is limited by the weather. But we'll figure it out. But talking about all this and what exactly do I get as a result of this? Trying to have this conversation and completely wearing out my voice in the process. What's the net effect of this? 8 views, 3 likes, one of which is my own, because it's sad having to like your own stuff just so anybody will like it at all in this day and age of the YouTube algorithms turning your channel into a wasteland. And the parasocial idiot who hates all of my streams, disliking it as usual. And I know they're subscribed to me because they'll do it even if it's unlisted. There you go. Your latest reason why streaming on YouTube cannot devolve down to just sitting here getting nowhere while YouTube purchases talent to make it look like their streaming scene has any credibility whatsoever. I have much better things to do than sit here talking to nobody all night. Things that have been sitting in the box, stuff that's been sitting unfinished, and other stuff to work on. So, if I disappear for days at a time during the summer, it's either work or that stuff. But I just remember back in the early days of YouTube when this was viewed as a form of social media and a form of interaction. There was none of this corporate crap. There was none of this, I want to grow my channel by whatever means necessary, so I'm going to slam my audience with gimmicks and calls to action. None of this. And just, I think what it has done to the viewers mentally with all the crap that's going on in the last 15 years has all but ruined this platform as a way to, socialize. Even the removal of video responses, 10 years ago now? When YouTube sabotaged them, put them so it took too many clicks to click on them and said, nobody's using them anymore, the click-through rate is too low, let's get rid of them. What happened to the human side of YouTube? I don't know. If you see me disappear for a while, it's because I'm fed up with all of this. And working on some other stuff. If I even feel like working on stuff at all. There's plenty of games to play with these new controllers and whatnot. Plenty of games in the backlog Plenty of things to do besides sit here throwing away my free time for nothing. So let's stop doing that. Good night.